Hi everyone. So I'm finally doing this YouTube video thing. Crazy that the path has led me down this road. Um, so I'm gonna touch on a couple of things that Chancellor mentioned in our Coming Out of the Cancer Closet video that we posted for my friends and family on Facebook. Um, I was diagnosed on April 25th with invasive ductal carcinoma, hormone and HER2 positive. I'll get into what that means a little bit later, but that was my diagnosis. I immediately began researching and alternative therapies, contemporary therapies, and really trying to understand what I was dealing with, how I was going to deal with this, and what my path to healing and health was going to be. And I guess survivorship to some extent, right? Some of the things that I was really struggling with spiritually, emotionally, personally, I couldn't find answers for on the internet. I couldn't find stories or testimonials. Maybe it's my ability to go inward and really struggled with some of that spiritual kind of awakening. Maybe it was partly because I was in denial, which absolutely happens. But anyway, I was struggling with it. And the more I researched and the more I spoke to friends, family, loved ones, the more it became very clear to me that the information that I was gathering was so important and so important to share with others. And I pulled a card. I have this little kind of, not tarot cards, but I have this little card, and I decided to pull one today before I started this, just to see, what my gut instinct was. And I want to read this to you because the card I pulled was called Share Your Gifts. This is the answer is simple, and you just pull one card and it kind of gives you a guide for the day. And I just pulled it. And basically it said, we all have gifts of spirit that we're here to share. The ego often discounts them as not good enough, not significant enough, not important enough to make a difference. Don't fall into this trap and hide them. Know that the simple endowments of spirit, which are grounded in love and kindness, come from your heart and are needed now more than anything. Now is the time to do this. Don't be shy. Share your gifts as others need your love and kindness now. So, because I feel like the whole world needs our love and kindness, I'm hoping to bring value to anyone who has been diagnosed with cancer, anyone who is at their wits' end with answering questions on how they approach this and how they maximize it. I'm a big believer that the universe is always working in your favor, in our favor, on a personal level. And the universe decided to give me cancer. And what I do with it defines me. And I really feel strongly that some of the information that I've incurred through this process can be helpful. Worst case scenario, my friends and family who I love dearly get to follow my journey with me and get to see the updates and what my status is and what my care plan is and how I'm doing, which is very beneficial for me because then I don't have to answer those questions all the time, which brings me to a point. I'm really hoping that we can keep my cancer talk to this venue because it's hard enough to let it go every day and forget about it, so to speak. I mean, I don't think anyone who's ever been diagnosed with something like this can really ever let it go. I mean, it is the first thing I think about every morning. It is the last thing I think about every day. It fills my mind. So a part goal here is not only to help people, but to also say, hey, look, if you see me out or if you call me on the phone to see how I'm doing, maybe we just keep it light. Maybe we could not talk about the cancer, because it's hard enough for me to forget about it from time to time. And I don't want to be reminded of it sometimes. I think that's a healthy state for anyone going through this. I filled my time with distractions. I think it's something we do. I think to some extent I was in shock for a period, maybe denial. It's a process, and I appear to be, my video appears to be running weird. Okay, I think we're caught up now. So that's my secondary goal is, don't come up, put your hand on me. Hey, how you feeling? I don't want that. I've never been sick. I'm not a sickly person. So this is new for me. I'd like to talk about today how the diagnosis happened. That's a big question that a lot of people ask me. And I think it's important, and I think it'll give some insight that may be helpful for anyone moving forward, because I think I got very, very lucky with my doctors. I got just very lucky with everything, to be honest. So maybe that's where I should start. Maybe I should start with, how lucky am I? Last year, 2018, I started my own consulting company. I had spent the 2 years prior to that and last year really doing a lot of spiritual and emotional work. I went above and beyond. I had struggled with some traumas in my life, which caused some PTSD. I went to the jungle and I drank a psychedelic brew called ayahuasca with a shaman. I'm not afraid to admit that. It cured me. I literally do not have near the anxiety or panic attacks or traumas that I had prior. It helped me really center and focus, and it helped me learn how to love myself. I'm not promoting it. I'm just telling you that was my journey, and that's what worked for me. I have a great shaman here in the States who I adore, and she's helped me through a lot. So I spent a significant amount of time over the last 3 years healing, mostly the last 2 years, but 2.5, let's say, healing and growing and learning to love myself, and setting boundaries and all those super healthy things that I think most people do. I simply wasn't one of those people. So that was part of a process, and part of my spiritual struggle with this whole diagnosis is that really, I had to heal all of these things in my life just to get sick. Shit, right? So that's my spiritual struggle, and I'll talk more about that. I've had insurance struggles. I was not covered last year. I got covered as of January 1 this year. I was in the hospital January 14th. I got to give a shout out here to my guy, Emmett. Quite possibly the great love of my life. Actually, I'm certain he is so my person. We had our first date on January 14th, or I should say we were supposed to have our first date on January 14th. I woke up January 14th in the morning with my leg swollen. Let me just backpedal just a bit. January, I was probably in the best shape of my life. I could show you a schedule that was unbelievable. I was studying for a new course. I was changing careers. I had X amount of hours blocked out for that. And in between that, I had my meditation sessions and my yoga sessions, all of which I was doing at home on my own. I was paddleboarding, riding my bike, walking, running, eating super clean. Honestly, probably quite, non-smoker, the best shape of my life, probably healthier mentally and emotionally than I'd ever been. And January 14th, I wake up and my leg is swollen and in a lot of pain. And I called my doctor. I figured I had injured myself, maybe paddleboarding the day before, or just maybe I pushed myself too much, or maybe I slept on it funny. I could not figure out what the issue was. So I ended up going to see my doctor about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on that day. I think it was a Tuesday. Um, and and actually, I think it was a Monday. I can't remember. Anyway, um, he said to me, you know, I have to tell you that you should probably go get a ultrasound. And he said, you probably don't have a DVT. You have, no reason, nothing provoking this DVT. I haven't taken birth control, since I was in my 20s. I can't take hormones, haven't been able to. I'm not overweight. I eat really well. I'm pretty clean diet, other than, cheeseburgers from time to time. But, we all have our things. But for the most part, I had no reason to have this. And so I kind of talked myself in and out of it and in and out of it. And so I came home, I put my leg up, knowing that I could go to the hospital and have an ultrasound if I deemed it necessary. Otherwise, I would wait in the morning and we would do it in my physician's office. So given that I have a healthcare background, I recognized that, a DVT is a pretty serious thing. It's a deep vein thrombosis. It's a blood clot very deep in your leg. It can be very dangerous. It can break off and go into your lungs and cause a pulmonary embolism. When you hear about people having blood clots and dying or almost dying on an airplane, that's what we're talking about here. Same thing. The difference with me is I had no risk factors. I had not been traveling. There was no reason for me to have it, but there was something intuitively in me, not to mention this high level of anxiety, like, oh my gosh, what if I lay down and go to bed tonight and, I get a pulmonary embolism and I don't wake up. It happens. So I decided not to put myself through that kind of stress, and I decided to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital. I called Emmett because we were supposed to have our date. I said, hey, look, I'm going to have to cancel. I'm on my way to the hospital. I may have a DVT. I got to get this thing done. I'm sure it's going to be fine. If I get out of there and it's no issue, maybe we can still get together. I can hardly walk, but, it'll be fine. He's like, okay, look, just keep me posted. He was driving some distance. He lives down in Naples, so he was coming about an hour and a half. So I go to the hospital, and I don't have one, but I have 2 DVTs in my leg, and I get taken to the emergency room. Now, mind you, I thought I was coming home, so I go in a sweat jacket with no bra, no makeup. I am convinced in my head that nothing is wrong. So I go, they ship me down to the emergency room. I don't have family here. So I, at this point I know there's an issue. I have a DVT. I'm afraid. I'm on the phone with my girlfriend, Becca, who's a physician who was incredibly helpful. They shipped me off to a CT scan. I'm freaking out. I'm like, can someone just give me a blood thinner and aspirin or something? I don't want to die, right? Even though I'm in the hospital. It was so just out of the blue for me. And so they take me in for a CT scan. Lo and behold, I have a pulmonary embolism. They give me some major dose of blood thinners. They take me to a room and admit me to the hospital. So, it was a journey. It was an interesting day. It was not fun, as you can imagine. I'm sure many of you have had, similar situations where you ended up in the ER and they admitted you to the hospital, and it's just not a good situation. I'd never been on any medication in my life. So they send me home. They give me a prescription for blood thinners. They did a bunch of tests in the hospital, and of course, Emmett is texting me saying, hey, would you like me to come? I can be there. And I'm sitting there going, our first date? Really? No makeup in the hospital? This is atrocious. There's just no way this is happening. I was fortunate enough to have a girlfriend staying with me, Thomason. Hey, dibs for Thomason being here. We had some girl time planned. She was here visiting her son as well. And I was so grateful that she was here in my house, because the level of anxiety, thinking that you could just have this thing break apart in your leg in any minute and cause another pulmonary embolism that could potentially kill you. They send you home with, if you have any chest pains, or if you're struggling with breathing, come back to the emergency room. Well, guess what? Those are the exact symptoms of anxiety. And even though I had overcome the sheer panic, where like I would shake and all that trauma that I had cured, the anxiety was still there. And so like my chest felt tight, and I couldn't breathe. So the anxiety symptoms were the same as a pulmonary embolism. Oh, and by the way, they're the same as the side effects from the blood thinners. What the hell, right? So, so there was some anxiety, and I was struggling with it. But fortunately, she was here in the house. I wasn't alone. Hugely grateful. I mean, that was just like universe aligned for me there. I ended up going out with Emmett a few days later, and he was awesome. He was just awesome, and was so, he's just the kindest, most caring soul I have ever had the luxury of sorry, my computer shut down, that I've ever had the luxury of actually being in a relationship with. It's pretty exciting. No offense to any exes. So anyway, so I spent, the next couple of weeks wearing a compression stocking, taking my blood thinners, researching the blood thinners, researching the DVT, doing all this stuff, scheduled an appointment with a hematologist, a blood doctor. Went to see him. I had also had my OBGYN appointment in that time because as I mentioned, I didn't have any insurance in 2018. So my insurance kicked in January 1. So January 14th, I had this episode, praise the Lord for being covered. And then so I'm scheduling, I have in my head, I'm going to schedule all of my tests. I want a year without everything. So I go see the hematologist who says, and this was probably the end of January, February, beginning of February, who says to me, we did some tests and you are positive for factor V. So factor V, if you don't know, is, it means I have thicker blood. I have thicker blood than someone who doesn't have factor V. And so my clotting factor is much quicker. So if I cut myself really bad, I'm more likely to clot, which is awesome and it's totally healing, but it's not so great when you have a constricted vein in your leg. It's also, you can be prone to blood clots, but what the doctor said to me was, this is not enough of a reason to have a DVT. If you were a smoker, or if you were on birth control or hormones of some kind, if you were overweight, if there was anything else going on, maybe. And he said, but I have some pretty serious concerns that there may be an underlying thing here like cancer. And he said those words with Emmett and I in the room because the DVT essentially was unprovoked, was his word. This situation was unprovoked. Come to find out much later, cancer patients have thicker blood. So it's just part of it. So even if I wasn't factor V, my blood would have been thicker, and this triggered, the DVT triggered the cancer. Like it was, the cancer triggered the DVT, I guess is what I really mean to say. So it's important to know that because if you have any kind of blood issues going on, a blood clot, anything, and no other risk factors, you might want to go, get some tests done. So he suggested I go get my OBGYN appointment, PAP, my mammogram, and a colonoscopy, which I was sort of in the process of doing already. I had already met with my OBGYN. So I scheduled my mammogram. I hadn't scheduled the colonoscopy yet, but I thought, one thing at a time. I scheduled my mammogram, and it came back abnormal. And literally on the same day, it was a Wednesday, I remember it very clearly, I got a call from my OBGYN and from my mammogram people, and they said that I needed to have an ultrasound for both. At this point, it was stressful enough having the leg thing. Like I felt like a gimp. I was struggling to get around. It was painful. It would swell on me like elephant swell, compared to the other calf. I'm on these blood thinners, I'm afraid I'm going to cut myself or get in a car accident and bleed out. Like the things that go in your head are just crazy. And a month prior, this wasn't even anything I was thinking about. So I remember being very upset that day, thinking something's not right. Something's just not right what if this is cancer? And it was ironic because it had come up in several different things. Like even in one scenario, Emmett ran into the store to get something for me, and he picked it up and it had cancer on it, like the sign, the symbol for the astrological sign Cancer. And I looked at him, I go, take that bag, I don't want that. It was a lighter. It was a lighter for like my candles and stuff at the house. He said, hey, I know you need a lighters for the candles, so I got this, and it had literally a cancer on it. And I'm like, wow. I mean, the universe was clearly sending me a message, and I was completely in denial, to be honest. So anyway, I go do both ultrasounds. Ultimately, I've got some cysts and some fibroids, the female stuff, but nothing suspicious. The mammogram came back with something, and they said I needed to have a biopsy. And so, in my head, I have girlfriends who've had biopsies, and many, in fact, and it's never anything. So again, in my head, I'm like, a lot of people have this. They think they see something. They're just being extra careful. Surely this is fine. I'm only 48 years old. I just was in denial. So they do the biopsy. Now we are into April, where, about April 20th or whatever it might have been. And I'm in my car and I'm heading down to M's in Naples, and I get a phone call. And it's from some liaison at Sarasota Memorial, some oncologist liaison. She didn't describe herself that way, but she was calling with the test results. And I was about 2 miles from his house, and she said, why don't I just call you back? And I knew, I had been on pins and needles waiting for this result, and 48 hours seemed like forever to wait. And so, I kind of forced her to tell me while I was driving. And, I didn't cry. I have to say, looking back, I think I was in complete shock. Prepared, not shocked like I couldn't drive the car. I wanted to get to his house. But, I mean, there's just nothing like hearing, you have invasive ductal carcinoma, HER2 and hormone positive. And so do you understand what that means? Well, it's cancer, right? Yes. Okay. So, I mean, just processing that. And then she went on to explain exactly what it all meant. I've no clue what she said after that, to be honest. It's kind of all you hear. And so I got to M's house, and he was on the phone. And I went outside and I called my mother. And when I came back in, I told him. And, there weren't a lot of tears. It wasn't like I was freaking out. It was it was surreal. The whole experience was very surreal. I will talk more about the insurance stuff in my next video. That's my plan, is to cover some of the things that I found out immediately following that. But at the end of the day, I think I lived in kind of I cried a little. It was really more disbelief. It was shock. It was, how can this be possible? I'm healthy. I eat healthy. I don't smoke. I don't take hormones. I mean, I'm meditating. I've healed myself of all these things. How can this be possible? So it sent me on a journey of research, alternative therapies, contemporary therapies, why this happened, how I should be feeling. Why am I not feeling anything other than complete detachment from the whole thing? I should note here that I have always, my entire life, been one of these people who say, if I ever get cancer, I am never going to have chemotherapy. I'm just not going to poison my body. I'm not going to kill my cells. It's just not going to happen. That's not the route I'm going to go. And I have to say, what an ignorant freaking statement. What an ignorant statement that was to make. It's very easy to say when you don't have cancer. So, It's just, I have to plug in my computer here so we don't run out of juice. Yeah, just an ignorant thing to say if you've never had cancer. So stop doing that, people. Not cool. So, and it depends on what kind of cancer you have. All the treatments are different. So, I carried around this feeling in my gut. I think people are afraid to ask the question, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to have this, I can't imagine. Like, I've had people say, I can't imagine having that happen to me. And it's unimaginable. So what does it feel like? Well, it feels like, I wrote it down, it feels like a calculated, soul-crushing rot. I'm not going to sugarcoat it here, guys. It feels like a necrosis of your spiritual self. Necrosis is a premature death of living tissue, right? That's what it feels like. That's what you're carrying around in your gut. That's what you're feeling every night, at least for me, every morning. Get it out of me. I just want it out of me. What do I need to do to survive this? Like, that's where I think your mind, once you get out of that shock zone, your mind just goes to that place. How do I survive this? How do I survive this emotionally, mentally, financially, physically? By the way, I'm petrified of needles. Like, I pass out when I get my blood taken. As soon as that vein starts coming to the surface, I'm out. I get woken up with smelling salts. How am I going to deal with this? All of this invasiveness that I'm about to face, right? How do I not manifest the worst case scenario? Because I'm a powerful manifester. And, how do I keep it where it's going to be productive and healthy, and how do I, if the universe is always working in our favor and the universe has given me cancer, how do I take that and make it into a space where I am operating at my highest, best self? What do I need to give the world? What is my gift that I can share? Because cancer is not a gift, and it's not a gift I'd want to give anyone, and I'm not going to pretend that it is. But what gift can I take from it? Cancer is the epitome of the universe forcing you to love yourself. You no longer have an excuse not to love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, you are not going to survive it. It's that simple. And I had just spent 2.5 years learning how to love myself, and I pretty much thought I had it nailed. Well, I guess the joke's on me. because now I'm really forced to go to the next level with that. And for that, I'm grateful, because that ultimately will play out the rest of my life. So I get the diagnosis. Emmett and I deal with it. I gave him an out. We hadn't been involved that long. I gave him an out. But at the end of the day, he's my person and I'm his person. And, he says this is a blip in the radar, right? So he goes to every doctor's appointment with me. He holds my hand with every pinprick. And there's been a lot. I probably have incurred well over $35,000 in medical bills, and I haven't even had a surgery yet, just so that you understand the dynamic of the financial dynamic of a cancer diagnosis. So, okay, so I'm going to live my highest self. I'm going to share all of this crazy research that I've done with alternative therapies, contemporary therapies. I'm going to share what I'm going through spiritually and emotionally and physically with all of you. For my family and friends, I feel so grateful that I have such an unbelievable strong network. I can't count on both my hands how many people have reached out to me and said, hey, say the word, I'm there. Anything you need. And I am so grateful for all of you. And so I hope this will be a good venue for you to learn and understand where I am and what's going on with me, so we can have light conversations when we talk and see each other. Sorry, I get emotional when I talk about my friends and family because I just love you all so damn much. You understand? Okay, so my goal is to shed light on some of the questions that I struggled finding about this journey. I intend to share every ugly piece of it with you. I'm a very transparent person, and I'm afraid to share it with you, but I'm going to do it anyway because I feel like this is the thing I am drawn to do. I just feel like I have to do this. Some for me, some for you, and maybe some for someone else out there that I can provide information for that they're seeking. I am a research junkie, so maybe someone will find this helpful. And if one person finds this helpful, then I have completed my mission. Okay, so there's that. So I'm going to bring us just up to date with where we are. So I am incorporating both alternative practices as well as contemporary practices into my care plan. It was a real struggle for me for a long time to accept that I might have to do chemotherapy. Like I said, it's just not something that I ever envisioned myself doing. Poisoning my body is number one at the top of the fear list for me. I'm super sensitive to certain foods and medicines, and I've always been like hypersensitive. And so the thought of putting a bunch of poison in my body is pretty terrifying, actually. The number one at the top of the list for me. The needles and medical stuff and testing is secondary to that. So I'm going to talk about all that. You're going to go through this with me. Chancellor went through some of this last year. We didn't have to do chemo and radiation on him, but it was I would say one of the most difficult times of my life, his cancer. He has truly been the center of my universe, my strength, my security, my rock, my very best friend. And I would say that I actually probably struggled more with that than what I'm personally struggling with now, but this is just the beginning, so I guess we'll see. So I got the diagnosis. I went from the diagnosis to an MRI to determine the size, scope, what we were talking about, stage, etc. Basically you have to lay in a thing like this with your like boobs in this thing for 35, 45 minutes. It's incredibly painful on the shoulders. I mean, no one ever told me that, so I'm telling you that because it was like holding my arm was incredibly uncomfortable. Not to mention they're putting this dye in you, which, as you know, I'm already afraid of that kind of stuff. It was not comfortable. It wasn't horrible. I was glad to have it over, and I obviously wanted to know more about my diagnosis, so you find a way to get through that kind of stuff. Some of the ways I get through that kind of stuff, a gift one of my soulful girlfriends gave me was a meditation. It's called Sata Nama. It's great anytime you're undergoing any kind of stress or not being able to deal with things well. And it's just, you just take your fingers like this and you go Sata Nama, Sata Nama. And you breathe and you Sata Nama and you just breathe. And I did Sata Nama through that whole MRI process. We learned at that time that it was about 1.3 centimeters, which is really small and really early. And so there was a lot of gratitude wrapped in that package. And because of my fibroids and cysts and other issues that I was having only this year, by the way, the doctor said, you know what, I want to do a PET scan because you're worried about this, because at this point you're thinking, I have 5 fibroids and a cyst. I now have a tumor in my breast. I am completely, covered in cancer. I mean, and you can't sleep and you're thinking, I need to just do everything that I want to do, you know, sorry, good timing for my computer to go off. I just need to do everything that I want to do and tell everybody that I love them. And sorry, it's really scary. That's the point. So we decided to do this PET scan, and basically I'm told that I'm going to be filled with this radiation. If you've never done a PET scan, wow, are you in for a treat? So I'm going to be filled with this radiation, and that I can't be around young children and old people for, 36 hours or something. I can't, 24, 36 hours. I'm like, well, what about my dog? Can I be around my dog? And it's like, honey, should I even sleep in the same bed with you? Like, what, like they're going to fill you with this radiation. Gosh, like that was like not something I was prepared for. So if you ever have a PET scan, which gives you lots of information about how much cancer is in your body, but fills you with this stuff, I mean, it's a conundrum, right? You want to know, because, you want to know, but then you don't really want to do this other thing. So, you grin and bear it, you go do the PET scan. I will say that was probably one of the most terrifying tests that I had, waiting for those results. That whole process, you can't eat, you can't have any like sugar. It's something about sugar. The cancer cells through a PET scan literally light up and glow. So they scan your whole body, and anywhere there's cancer, they'll glow. And I, again, very fortunate because I only had the one spot in my breasts. And in your head, you don't want to manifest that it's everywhere, but it's hard not to, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I mean, this is what we've been ingrained to believe and do. So again, very, very grateful that the PET scan came back. I also had to have some genetic testing, which took about 10 days because of my age and my family history with my mom having the same diagnosis, same spot, not hereditary. Okay, so mom survived, by the way. It's 10 years ago, and she's doing amazing, and she is such a huge support for me, and I love you so much, Mom, if you watch this. You are so important to me. And I love you so much. So anyway, I do this genetic testing to find out if you have the BRCA gene. So the BRCA gene is basically the one that Angelina Jolie had. And standard protocol for the BRCA gene is double mastectomy, take out the female organs, hysterectomy. Usually BRCA comes back with a vengeance. And if you do that, you have much better odds of it not coming back at all. And not having any future issues. I don't know what those odds are because fortunately I didn't have the BRCA gene. Praise Jesus. And I know that's a rough path to go down, and I send blessings and namaste to anyone who is struggling with that. That's a scary one. They're all scary. So I go through that process, and I don't have it. I have this one spot. We've found it early, which I can't stress to y'all enough. If you get nothing else from me, go get your mammogram every year. I don't care how old you are. If you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s and your insurance doesn't cover it, I'm going to post a link at the bottom of this video of the trucks that are in local areas where they do mobile mammograms. Just get it done because it is the #1 growing cancer in women today, and it is growing so fast. And I'm convinced it's our food supply. I'm not sure there's anything we can do about it, even though I've eaten healthy pretty much my entire life. I'm not a processed food eater. I eat lots of fruits and vegetables. I juice now. It doesn't matter. The damage has been done. And so you may not be pre-susceptible, but it doesn't hurt just to go get the mammogram. Well, the truth is it hurts. It's not a comfortable test to have. And I've always complained and said, if guys had to put their, testicles in a vice like we do to find out if they had cancer, they would find another way to do it. But now looking back, again, hindsight, just go do it. Put it on your calendar. Get it done every year. Just go do it, because it is the difference between life and death. And I feel very, very grateful that this was detected early. To date, it's not in my lymph nodes. It hasn't spread. And that's the difference between early detection. I mean, if you catch it late, it can very easily be in your lymph nodes. It can spread to other parts of your body, and then you are just fighting another demon right there with it. So early detection is key. I've probably had this for well over a year. And they just now found it. So, every year is really important. I missed last year. What would have happened if I would have went last year? Who knows? Maybe they wouldn't have seen it, or maybe they would have seen it. It would have even been earlier. I don't know, but I do know it's critical. Early detection is critical. And while I'm on that subject, if you want to watch a movie, there has been something that one of my girlfriends who just had a double mastectomy, she's a survivor, gotten through all of her chemo and radiation. There is something that she recommended to me. It's called RX Early Detection by Sandra Lee. It's a little 30-minute video, 30-minute movie on HBO. It's only 30 minutes. Sit down with your family, sit down with your daughters, sit down with your mothers, sit down with the female friends and watch it, because it is hard to watch, but it will scare you enough to make sure you go get your darn mammogram every year, because hers was caught a little bit later. So, oh, there goes Chancellor. So anyway, so I think I've covered a lot. Okay, so I did the PET scan, and it came back fine. And trying to find a surgeon was my next step. I'm gonna pause for 1 minute. Chance, come here, buddy. So sorry about that interruption. So then I had to find a surgeon. Insurance issues prevented that from happening. So the sense of urgency was created, and that was a really, really traumatic experience for me. And so I'm going to cover that in the next video when I get into the insurance stuff, which I think is going to really help people prepare if, God forbid, this ever happens to them or someone that they know. Maybe they can be helpful. I did, however, finally get into a surgeon, and my surgery is July 8th. I go in for a pre-op at the end of June. It is a long time since my diagnosis, about 2.5 months. The ideal time is within 30 days, but unfortunately, like I said, I had some insurance issues, and we'll talk about all of that in the next video. I'm grateful that I'm grateful that the date is on the calendar, and we are moving forward with that. I mentioned that I did a lot of research in the alternative field. I am incorporating some alternative practices, so I'm mixing the alternative with the contemporary. So the ancient with the traditional, I guess, or the ancient with the new, or however you want to describe it. I prefer to say, contemporary when I'm talking about physicians and protocol. And the regular protocol is surgery, chemo, radiation. Again, something I never thought I would do. But after researching all of the alternative things, I decided that my care plan, it was most important, especially in this early stage, to do the normal protocol. And there was a defining moment for me in that we were sitting with the surgeon at Moffitt Cancer Center, where I'm going in Tampa, Florida, and the surgeon gave us the odds, right? Because I have the HER2 gene, and you have those all over your body. So if you have a HER2 gene in your breast that becomes cancer-laden, the chances of it spreading or coming back somewhere else are very, very possible. If you go through the standard procedure of surgery, chemo, and radiation, you have a 95% chance that it will never come back or resurface in 5 years. So after 5 years, that risk even goes up. That chances of it coming back can get as close to 100%. I mean, they have this dialed in, okay? And as horrific as the surgery and the chemo and the radiation is, 95% are good odds. And Emmett said to me when I was still not sure, even after hearing that statistic, and I'm like, I'm still not sure I'm getting chemotherapy. I'm not sure I want to be poisoned with a bunch of stuff. He said to me, honey, he put it in terms I could understand. He said, honey, if we were in Vegas and you were sitting down at a table, and at that table you had 95% odds, what would you do? And I said, well, gosh, I'd never leave the table and I'd probably be a millionaire, right? Okay, I get it, Em, I get it. And it really, really kind of opened up a door for me to consider chemotherapy and the standard practices and the contemporary practices more realistically. So that was really, the day after that is when I kind of made my decision. And I've also been incorporating, good things like juicing and changing some things in my diet. I'm not diehard though. I haven't gotten off the meat, and right now I have no intention of doing that. I have some pretty severe anemia through this whole process, and so I need the iron because the supplements aren't doing it. I'm not storing iron as much as I need to be, which makes me very tired. And I eat ice like some weird addiction all of a sudden. It's just bizarre. So that's a lot. So we have the surgery scheduled July 8th. There's going to be a lot going on in between there. I am so grateful for everyone. I hope this works for a venue for you. If you know someone who has cancer or who's been recently diagnosed and, they want to go through this journey with me, that'd be great. You can turn them onto my channel. I am not trying to make money here. I'm not trying to become famous. I really just, if there were things out there with all the inspirational people that I found and all of the questions that I had, there were some things that were not really laid out because I think people are apprehensive to talk about the spiritual part. And I think they're apprehensive to talk about the financial part and some of the physical parts. And I'm pretty darn transparent. So I'm just going to do it. And it's not always going to be perfect, and it's not always going to be happy, and it's not going to be easy. But I feel like I'm called to do this. And so that's it. I guess I'll just stop there. I do want to end always with a plug about one thing: plastic. Because I'm not like some radical environmentalist, as many of you know. I do, however, believe that human change, not climate change, human change is what really can transform the world. And so I'll just ask in this one to be mindful of the plastics you use. If you're going to Dunkin' Donuts like Emmett was and getting 2 big plastic cups, one filled with ice and one filled with a nice coffee and 2 straws and 2 lids, and you're doing that every day, the impact that you're having on the environment sucks. And we can do better. And we literally have plastics in ourselves right now from all of the plastic use in this country and our own personal plastic use. And, I walk to the most beautiful beach in this country. I live on Siesta Key Beach, and I could take a trash bag from my house to the beach, 1.5 miles, and fill that sucker every day with straws and styrofoam cups and plastic. So if we can change one thing in our life, I just ask that you are more aware of the disposable things that you're using. If you want to drink water all the time, go buy a cup. Buy a big cup that, I have a friend who made a really cool one with me. It says Tracy, Peace, Chance on it. It's what do you call it? Yeti cup. And I wash it all the time, and I carry it everywhere with me, and I can go into, Quick Marts and get fresh ice and water, and nobody ever charges me, so I save myself a little money as opposed to buying that bottled water that you don't even know if it's filtered. The reality is you could be healthier and you can make less of a better impact on the footprint that you leave. So single-use plastics suck. If I change nothing else, I'm going to say that in every single message. Be mindful. Be mindful. Okay. I love you guys, and I'm looking forward to sharing more with you. Have a beautiful day.